Ramanuja, Myth and Reality, Chapter 2. The history of Ramanuja was derived from traditional accounts furnished by Guru Parampara and Koil Vulugu and later enlarged by traditional exponents as Ramanuja's Charita. We may here examine some very valuable material embedded in these accounts. As Ramanuja spent most of his time at Srirangam and most of the reforms attributed to him were claimed to have been made while he was at Srirangam, a study of Srirangam temple inscriptions provide most authentic data. A reference to the name Ramanuja occurs in Srirangam in the time of Rajendra Chola III around 1253 CE, wherein a land is mentioned as Ramanuja Churukkullai. Probably this land was connected with his Samadhi. The earliest reference to Ramanuja at Tirupati occurs in the reign of Vijayaganda Gopala, a Telugu Chola ruler who came to the throne at Kanchi around 1250 and ruled up to 1291. This inscription occurs in the east wall of the first Gopura and is in fragment and records the gift of 500 Varahan Panams with which a land was purchased for creating a flower garden and provisions for food offerings. It mentions the name Ramanuja in one line and Emberuman in another. In all probability, the name Emberuman also refers to Ramanuja. It is known that Ramanuja was known as Emberumanar in Vaishnava tradition. Though this inscription is dated in the reign period of Ganta Gopala, neither his regnal year nor the Saka era is available, and so it would be difficult to give a precise date to this record. Any date could be assigned between 1250 to 1290, that is the later half of 13th century. The earliest record in the Varadaraja temple of Kanchi mentioning the name of Ramanuja occurs in the year 1316. As such, we may be sure that Ramanuja lived certainly 1250 CE. If we give a few decades for the deification of Ramanuja, it is almost certain that he died before 1200. Thus, the traditional date of birth given to Ramanuja as 1017 seems to be acceptable, and if he had lived for 120 years, and he might have died around 1137. Guru Parampara. There are two versions of Guru Paramparas. One, Tenkalai version, Southern School, and two, Vadakalai version, that is Northern School. Both these vary in their accounts even with reference to the immediate successors, each projecting the head of their own school as the immediate successor of Ramanuja. Many historians have found the narrations in this text implausible. Hari Rao says that Ramanuja fetched the supplemental processional image of Ramapriya from the Sultan of Delhi. This is a sheer impossibility as the first Muslim invasion occurred only in the 14th century. There is no direct epigraphical evidence to show that Vishnu Vardhana between the year 1111 to 1141 was converted from Jainism to Vaishnavism by Ramanuja. Also see Hari Rao, page number 117 to 119, where he has argued that neither Kulotunga I nor II could have persecuted Ramanuja. Also, the story of consecrating Govinda Raja at Tirupati cannot be true. There is a graphic description of Ramanuja's acts and lost words just before his passing away in the Tamil work Guru Parampara Prabhavam, ascribed to Pinbalagiya Perumal Jiyar, whose date is not confirmed. It is said to be an early work placed close to the time of Ramanuja. Sri Krishnaswamy Iyengar, who published the text in 1968, states in his introduction that there exists a doubt about the period of the author because many statements from Acharya Hridaya and the Karika of Vadi Kesari and also one shloka of Vedanta Desika are seen verbatim in this text. So a doubt may arise whether this text is later than Vedanta Desikar. I think the doubts raised by Krishnaswamy Iyengar are valid when one examines the language of this text, which is in Manipravala, employing a mixture of both Sanskrit and Tamil of the time of the mature Vijayanagara period of 16th century. The language which is terse and most part unintelligible to the ordinary Tamil readers, lacking also the lucidity and clarity one finds in the language of the Chola period. Though there are profuse quotations from the Prabandhams, the text seems to be that of a non-Tamil writer. So, Iyengar opines that it might have been the work of a disciple of Pinbalagiya Perumal Jiyar and that he might have listened to the Jiyar's exposition and rendered it in his own words. There is a statement in the body of the text, page number 304, dealing with the life of Ramanuja that the author wrote this work as it appeared to his mind. It is evident that this text is mainly based on author's imagination and some hearsay accounts. Vedanta Desika is assigned to later half of 13th century and first half of 14th century. This work was probably composed in the Vijayanagara period in the 16th century, as the author does not claim to have verified and accessed any document of Srirangam temple administration for its historical authenticity. The author calls the Vimana of Varadaraja temple at Kanchipuram as Punyakoti Vimana. Epigraphical records show that the Vimana was rebuilt and covered with gold by the Vijayanagara emperor Krishna Deva Raya, who called the Vimana as Punyakoti, and the Vimana of the Tayar shrine in the same temple as Kalyana Koti. This name Punyakoti for the main Vimana does not occur earlier in the records. Also, the text mentions Gangaikonda Cholapuram as the capital of the Chola several times in the account of Nada Munigal. Nada Munigal lived 2 generations earlier to the birth of Ramanuja in 1017. Gangaikonda Cholapuram was established as Chola capital by Rajendra Chola I around 1020. So, the Guru Parampara mixes up chronology and is not historically accurate. But as it provides an astonishing list of historic personages, it certainly needs to be studied in a different perspective. However, it is an admirable attempt in that it brought an awareness of the Prabandham and the life of Alvars and Acharyas to the Sanskrit knowing 4th or 5th generation immigrants from Karnataka and Andhra regions. As such, it is set in the Puranic tradition necessarily filled with myths and miracles. The introduction called Pravesham says that it was inspired by Purana Ratnas and Yoga Yagnya Valkya. Yoga Yagnya Valkya Panchama Veda Purana Ratna Samudanjita Pramanakyaha. The famous compilation on the 63 Saiva saints was called Periya Puranam or Tirutondar Puranam. The most appropriate name for the account on Ramanuja would therefore be Ramanuja Puranam, as the main intention is to make a Purana out of the some events in the life of Ramanuja. So, at the primary level, this is intended to be a Purana and not history, and as such, all efforts to justify every aspect Ramanuja's life as history is fraught with danger. Most of the episodes mentioned are myths and not reality. However, a few glimpses of history may be tried from the messy pile of unhistorical narrations. Murderous attempts. According to Guru Parampara, Ramanuja's own Guru supposedly plotted to murder him as he was unhappy with his disciples' impertinence while he was explaining a passage from Upanishad. The Guru Parampara states that Yadava Prakasha, his Guru, was an Advaitin who exclaimed, Idanale nam Advaitariti Churukum. That is, by this our Advaita system will shrink. Even Mudiyum Virahiyen, that is, what is the means to finish him off? Then he decided to take his disciple to Varanasi on a pilgrimage and get him drowned there at Manikarnika Ghat. While he and his disciples reached the Vindhya forest, Ramanuja's cousin Govinda secretly warned him about the planned murder and asked him to escape. Ramanuja is said to have escaped and returned miraculously back to Kanchipuram. When asked how he had returned so early, Ramanuja told his mother about the attempt of his guru. Yadava Prakasha is said to have returned later, after which Ramanuja rejoined him for studies, and after some time again he picked up a difference of opinion and left him. This is the first in a series of murderous attempts on Ramanuja mentioned in Guru Parampara, now by an Advaita exponent. This episode lacks credibility. It will be seen that Ramanuja's life history accounts portray a number of such attempts. Each time, a person of a particular sect is portrayed as the murderer. Next, we see the high priest of Sri Ranganatha temple attempting to murder him, after which the ruling monarch as Shaiva who wanted to kill him, and finally men of his own sect, the Vaikanashas of the Srirangam temple, tried to kill him. Equally unworthy of any credence is the violent manner in which Ramanuja is said to have displaced the Vaikanasha priest from his post at the Srirangam temple. All these episodes were deliberately introduced to elicit sympathy towards Ramanuja and project the idea that wherever Ramanuja went, he provoked the instinct of others to kill him. These episodes do not enhance the greatness of Ramanuja that he was, but rather bring him down to a pedestrian level. If the Guru attempted to murder him, why did Ramanuja, who returned with such great difficulty and with divine help, again return to Yadava Prakasha to study? The whole episode is couched in such a Puranic and mythical language must be rejected as a pure myth. Carmen has pointed out the improbabilities in the stories of Ramanuja's life and chronology. Wife and Ramanuja's falsehood. The story about his quarrelsome wife and Ramanuja typecast women as quarrelsome and fans cast hierarchy, and also attempts poorly to portray him as a great devotee of a non-Brahmin. Once, when Tirukkachi Nambi came to Ramanuja's house as an invited guest, Ramanuja was away. As Nambi was in a hurry to go away, his wife fed him with all reverence as she was sincere to her husband. At the end, when Tirukkachi Nambi finished his meal, he removed the leaf on which he ate and threw it away himself. The woman cleaned the place with water and cow dung when Ramanuja arrived. According to another version, he left and his wife was removing the leaf with a stick when Ramanuja arrived and asked her what had happened. She narrated that she had just fed Nambi and he was in a hurry to go, had departed. Ramanuja felt that his wife was cleaning the place with cow dung because she had contempt for lower caste people, and it was this feeling that had made her act so. A furious Ramanuja sent her back to her parents' house with a false letter he wrote and promised her he would join her later. And when she went away believing him, he took sannyasa. Another story is also tagged onto it, in which Tirumalai Nambi came and stayed with Ramanuja for some time when Ramanuja's wife picked up frequent quarrels with Nambi's wife that enraged Nambi to leave the place, and Ramanuja got further enraged and sent his wife to her father's home and took sannyasa. This portrayal is in bad light. First, even if the story is true, Ramanuja is said to be compassion incarnate, Ramanuja Daya Patram, and this episode shows him exactly opposite of that. He could not tolerate the behavior of an unfortunate innocent woman and correct her. Instead, he wrote a letter and sent her away telling a deliberate lie that he would join her later, and after she left took sannyasa. This is unbelievable story, degrading womanhood and attributing falsehood to Ramanuja. No one would believe such an exalted personality like Ramanuja would stoop to this level of falsifying a letter to take sannyasa. This discredits Ramanuja's greatness, and we cannot accept it as a historical episode. The cleaning of a place where one takes food is a normal custom irrespective of whether the person who eats is father, husband, son, or woman. This customary cleaning is done in every house and has nothing to do with caste status. Such an episode is simply unthinkable for a true devotee like the great saint Ramanuja. And that Ramanuja wrote a false letter himself could be nothing but a blasphemy and tarnishes Ramanuja's image. Again, when Ramanuja arrived at Srirangam to head the Mata of Alavandar, the head priest of the Srirangam temple tried to poison him from where he escaped miraculously. According another account, Ramanuja himself attempted to poison the priest and kill him. Such attempts again and again do not speak good of his contemporaries and portray a certain amount of bad intention in narration. They carry no historical substance. Next, the Chola king attempted to kill him by calling him to the court. His disciple Kuratarvan impersonated Ramanuja and went to the king's court, while Ramanuja himself, after discarding his sannyasa robes, donned himself in white cloth and stealthily escaped to male court in Mysore country and stayed there for 12 years till the death of the Chola king. Kuratarvan, who went to the court in the guise of Ramanuja, was asked to proclaim that there is no god superior to Shiva. Shivat Parataram Nasti. Kuresha, in a play of words, wrote that Drona was bigger than Shiva. Both these words were used those days for a grain measure, with Drona being a bigger measure than Shiva. The enraged king is said to have plucked both the eyes of Kuresha, who suffered unbearable pain. He lived blind for 12 years when Ramanuja returned after the death of the Chola. The name of the king is not mentioned in the text. We are told he was a Chola. The 20th century Vaishnava historians first identified the king with Kulothunga Chola I because he was the only king who fitted in chronologically. I have shown elsewhere that this episode is said to have occurred when Ramanuja was in the Srirangam temple in the middle of his life. I have shown that the Srirangam carries a large number, and of all the inscription, the maximum number of records of inscriptions, almost 80, belong to the period of Kulothunga I, recording gift of land, gold, cattle and jewels to Lord Ranganatha for worship and festivals. Kulothunga's inscriptions are found from the beginning of his reign to the very end of it. He himself donated property for regularly arranging monthly festivals on his own natal star Pusham to Lord Ranganatha, which shows his deep devotion. Besides him, most of his queens, commanders, and other officers gifted enormous amounts to this temple throughout Kulothunga's reign. And what is more, the Srirangam temple was under the direct control of the Chola king, who appointed the Sri Karyam of the temple, and we have the names of all the Sri Karyam administrators in the inscriptions. The Srirangam records deal a direct blow to the accusation that Kulothunga I was anti-Vaishnavite and so wanted to persecute Ramanuja. So, Mr. Krishnaswamy Iyengar, who edited the Koil Olugu, rightly agreed that Kulothunga I could not be considered the persecutor of Ramanuja. On assumption that the persecution story of Ramanuja was an actual historical event, another Chola was searched, and now it is held that Kulothunga II should have been the king who persecuted Ramanuja. This again is chronologically and absolutely impossible if factual records are taken into consideration. All Vaishnava historians agree that Ramanuja was born in 1017. No one is willing to shift this date as they hold this as absolute, and also there is no difference of opinion about his age, that he lived up to the ripe old age of 120. It is believed that he lived in Melkote for 12 years and then returned to Srirangam and continued to live for many years before attaining Samadhi. Here comes the difficulty. Kulothunga ascended the throne in 1133. At that time, Ramanuja was aged 1116 years. Chronologically, all historical records negate Ramanuja's persecution by Kulothunga too. And we have seen that there is a repetitive tendency to bring in a theory of persecution as a Puranic tradition. We have no hesitation in saying that there is no truth in Ramanuja's persecution. As Ramanuja is great by his own right, he does not need these falsifying stories to create sympathy towards him to enhance his greatness. I have already shown that the author of Guru Parampara and other writers on Ramanuja's life created Puranas with no regard to history. The main work that inspired the Guru Parampara, according to the same text, was the Purana Ratna, Purana per excellence. So, we may consider them as good examples of myth making rather than history.